Hello Plant ID students, welcome to another week of class and another lesson with me, your TA Mary. Today I'm going to be talking with you about how to press the plants that you've collected, but before that I'd like to remind you that there's a fantastic document up on Canvas called the Plant Collection Document. It is a fantastic resource for you to use, and it's basically going to tell you how to get an A on this project. But it's got a lot more information about your plant collection project and a lot more information than what I will discuss in this short video. I highly suggest printing it out and referencing it throughout this project. With that, I will talk about plant pressing. So there are many reasons why we press collected plants. Mainly it is for cataloging and preservation. So lots of plants that are collected, they become pressed, preserved, and cataloged in something like an herbarium, a place where there are plants typically from all over the world that can be studied by any scientist who might have need of them. And so you can imagine if you have hundreds of thousands of specimens in one place, you need them to be in a form that is efficient. And so by pressing them flat, we can just simply fit many specimens in one small area. Second, it's about preservation. By pressing our plants, we're removing a lot of moisture from them that could eventually cause rot. That is a very important step. I can talk about that a little bit more later on. So let's look at these samples here. These were all collected from my short grass steppe site. That is the grassland to the east of the Rocky Mountains. So let's see, I'll only be talking about two of these specimens today. Let's start with this big one. Now it's good to have a piece of your herbarium paper on hand to make sure your plant is about the right size. Now, some of you might be collecting massive plants. That's okay, but it might mean that you have to fold them up. If this plant was any bigger, I'd consider folding it. And I would do that at this stage rather than later on when you need to mount these plants, because as you can imagine, they're going to get a little bit more brittle once they're all dry. And so if you would try and bend this plant to fit on a smaller piece of paper, you just end up snapping it. Let's see, I think that's all I want to say about that. Let's get on with the process. So first off, you want to lay down a few sheets of large cardboard on a flat surface on which you want to press your plants. Next, lay down a layer of paper towel. I'm using paper towel, but you can use newspaper, line paper, printer paper. Honestly, newspaper is the standard and it works great. Let's grab our sample now. And at this stage, we want to be very careful about the orientation of how this plant is laid out, because this is going to be the same orientation we're going to get when we mount the plant. So all the traits on this plant that we're most interested in, like the shape of the leaves, the flowers, the root, they should be obvious and evident. So by that I mean you don't want to squish your leaves underneath stems, and you don't want to let your flowers, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little yellow flower there. You don't want them to get lost amongst the leaves. So just be careful that all of your traits that you want to look at, they're obvious. Once you're happy with your orientation, lay down a second layer of paper towel, newspaper, whatever you got. Next, you want a few more layers of cardboard. Place that carefully over the top. And now you can start with your next plant. Another layer of paper towels. And I just have this little grass now. I promise you that is actually the whole individual. It's just little. This plant has a very interesting seed head. It's very flat. And these seeds are directional. They all want to face this way. Basically, this plant is telling you, please don't squish this. Be kind to it. Make sure this very, very cool seed head gets preserved and you're not just throwing these samples into a plant press. Be good to your samples. But that one was easy enough. Seed head, root, leaves. That little overlap there is just fine. And another layer of paper towel. Once that's sandwiched in, a few more layers of cardboard, and basically you'll just keep repeating those steps, basically creating yourself a pressed plant lasagna. Now usually we would wrap this up in a plant press, which would help the plants dry out and get them really flat. Because this is an online class this year, we don't have access to those plant presses, so we gotta do it the old-fashioned way. Just get whatever you have in your household that is heavy and flat. Here I've got some textbooks. Arrange those so weight is pretty evenly distributed across your press plants. And I would just keep layering book after book after book. Throw some free weights on there if you have them, until you feel like the plants that you've collected have enough weight on them. And let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Let's talk about limiting water. So as I said before, one of the prime objectives of pressing plants is to eliminate water. And what we've done so far is going to really help that out. But you should be checking your plants every few days at minimum to see if the paper towel you used is still dry. I highly suggest switching this out every day, every other day, to make sure that your plant isn't getting any mildew on it, and you're continuing that process of drawing water out. If you've got a really juicy plant, it's going to take a while for that plant to dry. It could take up to 4 weeks. Another reason why you should start this process now. Something like this, it's already pretty dried out. I don't know if we're going to get much more moisture out of that. And so I would expect it to be all dried and stop leaking moisture in about a week or 2 weeks. Now, I think that is all I want to talk to y'all about. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. And as a final hint, I just want to remind you, it's going to be best to start this project right now, because we need to find flowering plants. And at this stage in the year, not many plants are still flowering. So for this species, it actually has yet to flower. Same with this species right here. And unfortunately, this is what a lot of my specimens look like out in the shortgrass prairie right now, because we're in a horrible drought. And so it's already unlikely that plants will be flowering at this time of year, and it's less likely because of that drought. And so I just implore you, start your projects now. You're gonna help yourself out in the long run. And with that, I will let you go, but please, any questions, remember to email me and use me as a resource for whatever you need. Have a good week.